Lévy, you and I are very obsessed with animal-human relations and the aspects of our consciousness which shape them. What inspired you to focus your master research on anthropomorphism, and why you decided to do it a central topic of your thesis?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in anthropomorphism because I feel it's an important part of interacting with animals. Um, and that's actually what we also saw in the research, that it takes up a great amount of space during our cognition when we are watching them. Uh, I feel we continuously try to interpret or guess what the animal is doing, and anthropomorphism often, well, comes in and sometimes even takes over in that interaction.
What is the scientific definition of anthropomorphism?
That's a very good question, because actually there is no real scientific definition of anthropomorphism. It's quite wide and it varies. So we actually had to make our own definition for it, because we analyzed speech and we got like very specific sentences. So for example, when you say, oh, this dog is playing, we wouldn't necessarily label it as an anthropomorphism, because we know that dogs play from a scientific point of view. However, when we say the spider is playing, that changes totally the context of that sentence, because we usually don't see spiders as playful creatures. So it's very difficult to like pinpoint exactly what we can count as an anthropomorphism or not. So what we did is we made like a word list, and for example, playing in this case was on the anthropomorphism side, because we've tried to see it like for the same for all animals. So if a spider wouldn't be able to play, we saw it as an anthropomorphism.
And can you describe in general what you did in your research? What was your subject, object? It's very interesting.
So we looked at humans in the zoo, but also some people online. And we basically asked them a very open question. What do you see, think, or feel in front of this animal? And we asked them to film the animal while they were doing it. And yeah, they just spoke about the animal for 1 or 2 minutes. And later we then transcribed all the speech they told us. And then with the help of AI, we categorized all the speech. So we counted, for example, how many positive things they said, how many negative, or for example, how many anthropomorphisms. We did a lot of different speech. Also actions, whether they were talking about the group or just the animal itself, the environment. So we got like a very detailed view of everything that was said during that interaction.
When you observed 158 people, did they project themselves to the animals more often, or they saw something real in animal behavior? Or how did they perceive all of this? Can you elaborate more on this?
I analyzed 6 speech groups in depth, and from that we saw that there was actually a lot of variation depending on the people, but also depending on the animal. So as a general rule, we found that the more the animal looked like us genetically, so for example, great apes and monkeys, we would tend to interpret much more about their emotions and their thoughts, so the anthropomorphism side. And as you move away from our genetic distance, and you go to spiders or insects, there we see a lot more like objective descriptions. So it's moving, it's going here, it's going there, it's biting, all those kinds of things. So what we saw was a great diversity, and we saw, for example, for the anthropomorphism, that it was mostly the animal that determined how the speech was going to be. So not the human personality that much. And for the other groups, we saw, for example, positives and negatives also were coupled more or less with anthropomorphism. So the more anthropomorphisms, the more positives they were in the speech. And for the negatives, it was also the opposite. So insects and spiders got much more negatives.
Some participants in a major group reported some spiritual experiences. Do you think it's a genuine insight, or their mind searches for meaning? What do you think?
Yeah, so we also looked at the group we called Magic, which was indeed I think I defined it as inexplicably positive experiences. And also there was a big variety. So we saw that some people would just say, oh, this animal is magic, and without really much going into depth into it. And others, they did look like they had more spiritual experiences. But what was difficult is, of course, that this was speech, so we can't prove what was behind the real experience. So I think the answer is, again, both. I think people need to explain something they can't explain, and when it was positive, they kind of go into this like magic narrative. And but I think for some others, they were genuinely, experiencing something that they might see as otherworldly.
Do you think the spiritual connection with animals is within our culture, our code, our genes, our psychology? How do you think it works? Because you were talking about the insects, and probably our negativity to insects are caused by our instincts, right? Inherited instincts. What do you think about spiritual experiences here?
It's a difficult question. I don't really have like a perfect answer because we don't really know. But I think what's important to know, or what's interesting to know, is that many of the oldest religions are animistic in nature. So that means that they saw the divine in plants, trees, but also animals. And when you look at the history, it's almost every culture, without having contact with each other, had such a kind of view on nature. So it almost looks as if it's something that's inside of us, rather than something that's culturally constructed. I would even say that right now, within our current Western culture, we don't really see that. We don't really experience animals as spiritual beings. I think in Western culture, Christianity has left a big mark on how we perceive animals and how humans are above animals.
What was the most popular animal among groups?
So it was this small panda, the red panda, I think the English name is, because it was very cute and sleepy.
And it was in an artist, we didn't clarify.
Yes, we did it in artist, yes.
Yeah, because it appears very cute.
It appears very cute, it has these beautiful features, beautiful fur, and it was usually asleep during the day, so they were a bit sleepy, and people were really positive about that.
Is it also inherited instinctive feeling towards animals, feeling that cutest is more acceptable rather than more sharpness in an animal, something else?
Yes, I think from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that some features are more valued. For example, we know that there's a lot of research on baby features. So for example, that red panda has much more baby features than a spider or an ant or a snake. So I definitely think that some part of it is ingrained. Whether that is culture or learned behavior, that is always very difficult to test scientifically, because we are exposed to so many stimuli that already direct kind of our attention, like cute looks like a baby and dangerous looks like a spider. So to know if that's really something that's inherent or learned is difficult, but I definitely think that there are features that we that kind of direct that behavior towards liking an animal or not liking an animal.
I remember that in Australia they have a problem with possums because they look ugly for many people. But that really impacts conservation because people don't donate enough, they treat them very badly. But on the other hand, they're very cute and beautiful animals if you have a look from a different perspective to them. So I think this understanding why we don't like something helps us to change sometimes our perspective on something.
Yes, definitely. So you definitely see that in conservation efforts, that the beautiful animals or the more popular animals get much more funding, which is sad because ultimately, nature is an ecosystem and every animal is important to conserve. And I definitely also think that if you learn more about why an animal has specific features, why a spider has hairs because it needs to sense its prey and its environment, and it's actually how it perceives its environment. Yeah, you don't maybe see the hairs as something super scary, but you start to understand kind of the spider.
You mentioned that you used artificial intelligence in your research.
Yes.
Was it very helpful? How did you describe this experience?
Yes, yeah, so it definitely helped. It sped up the process, but it was also a long process to train the AI. I learned a lot because the AIs have a tendency of putting everything together, and the system I built, or yeah, the system I built was kind of made like blocks, and it actually invented new blocks, new speech categories as we went along. So you had to train that out. So it was a bit of an experience. I wouldn't say it was just easy, and ultimately the system I made was made to be used by humans. And you see that artificial intelligence sometimes really has trouble thinking like a human, and it will kind of put everything together, and that makes it more difficult.
What was the most fascinating part of your research?
So for me personally, it was just seeing all those people in front of animals. And what I really liked a lot was that some people came back afterwards and told me, I've never looked at animals this way. It totally changed their whole perspective of being in the zoo. So usually they would walk past a specific animal, and now they were forced to like follow it for 1 or 2 minutes. And yeah, they said that it completely changed how they looked at that specific animal. And for me, that was fascinating. So to know that my experiment, yeah, apart from the results and the scientific part, like the experience of watching animals was something people really liked.
I'm very interested in what kind of mechanism in our brain responsible for this slowing down in nature.
Sometimes I feel we see it wrong. So we see ourselves now as if how we live now in our current societies is the natural state, but that's false. We know that our evolution, 200,000 years, was in nature. So maybe the reason why people experience these intense feelings is because they are pulled back to that old state of mind that we kind of maybe have forgotten now.
I'm trying to challenge anthropomorphism from the perspectives of the anthropocentrists, and they say that we can't give a lot of rights to animals. We can't we can't research that animals are consciousness. We can't claim that because nobody knows, etc., etc. They continue doing that, and it's mostly right-winged people politically. Actually, I think there is some correlation between political views and being anthropocentrists.
Yes,
so how we can persuade them that we have to, there is no hierarchy between us and animals, and that we're just a part of animal kingdom,
yes,
as well as other animals.
I think the problem is that it's very dangerous to our current society because it is built in kind of this post-Christian view that we have control over animals and they should obey us and they are food and they are useful as textiles or for resources. And as soon as you flip that narrative and start seeing animals as yeah, conscious entities or sentient entities, it's dangerous for the economy and the way we do things, the way we are used to seeing things. So I think the danger lies there mostly, to existing systems, how we have built it. And I think we see it in the Eastern cultures, which are already less influenced by this Christian view that we are above animals. There you see, for example, villages where the snakes are adored, and it's a totally different mindset towards animals, and that will inevitably shape the economy and how we interact on a daily basis.
Do you personally think that there is something divine in animal?
Yes.
Something sacred? Do you follow this in religious terms or spiritual?
Yeah, so personally, I don't follow a major established religion, but I do regard nature as sacred, and I see something divine in animals, in humans too, but also in animals and actually everything that lives. I think we are part of this very mysterious, very complex world with so many layers that for me personally, it's almost impossible not to see some kind of divine beauty in that. But it's very personal.
Great, me too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lévy.